Crime, Wine, and Chaos contains adult language and graphic content. Listener discretion is advised.
We'll never ask you to drink the Flavor Aid, Chaos Kids. I'm Naomi.
I'm Amber. We won't. This is Crime, Wine, and Chaos. No. I'm so glad you said Flavor Aid too, which is the...
Because those who know. It's Flavor Aid, not Kool-Aid.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't afford the name brand shit. It was all generic.
That's right.
It was all generic down there in the jungle.
That's right. Oh my God. Hi, sister.
Hi.
How is you?
I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay. We're recording a little early today, and early in the day, but a day late because yesterday was you guys celebrated a holiday that I don't celebrate. But so it's weird. It's like I'm not on vacation because I don't have a job. Like I'm a broke dick without a job. So like every day's the same for me, but it still feels strange. I don't know.
Because we're doing this and it's noon on a Friday.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. How was the gathering?
It was good. It was very good. My house already looks like nothing ever happened.
Well, I mean, of course it does.
I got up and, put everything back right.
I got to say two things. One, Sebastian and Trinity brought home way too many deviled eggs, like WTF with you guys. I don't even know what to say to that.
Well, she made too many.
There's no such thing, really. Okay. And two, Sebastian came in with like a bag of rolls and they were all store-bought. What are we doing?
I'm sorry. First of all, why do you care about the holiday that you don't celebrate?
Because they're bringing food into my house, okay? They're bringing food into my house.
That's just the price of having roommates. Because I was the host, and so we did it the way that I wanted to do it.
I mean, I understand that, but one of the people that comes to these gatherings is known for making homemade rolls. I don't understand. She has no answer. She's just looking at me. She has no answer. You know what? It's fine. Because you know what? I know how to make them.
I know.
I'll just make some rolls.
I know how to make them too. We went with Michael's favorite rolls, which are the
Hawaiian
sourdough
ones. Oh, the
from
sourdough.
Costco. Yes.
Oh, who brought the Hawaiian ones? Oh, because I can't be mad about
we
the
got
Hawaiian
those too.
Because
that there was
those are always good. Yeah. The Hawaiian rolls are always good. Although the best rolls not made at home, by far, hands down, which we had last week when the power was out. When we ordered Azel's, those rolls from Azel's Chicken, they're like a Hawaiian roll meets a perfect white dinner roll. Like they're like this. Have you had them? Have you had?
No.
Oh, sister.
Sounds good.
They're like a Hawaiian roll where you don't even need butter because they're just so good, just straight up the way they are. You just dig right in.
That sounds amazing. I think I like all rolls. Really, I like the butterflake rolls.
Oh, I forgot about butterflake rolls. I haven't had a butterflake roll in a really long time. I'm really hungry right now.
Sister.
I haven't really eaten very much.
Let's not talk about food then.
Well, then tell me what you're drinking.
I'm drinking water because it's noon. It's noon.
But it's like holiday weekend. You could be drinking right now. There's nothing stopping you from drinking at noon on a Friday after Thanksgiving.
I know.
You're not driving anywhere, are you?
I don't plan to, but you never know.
Exactly.
No.
I mean, I
might have a glass later. I did get extra wine for last night, and then it didn't really get opened. So I've got a lot to work through.
All the more reason why you should be having a glass.
I probably
right now.
will later tonight.
Do we have anything for the good of the order? I feel like we do.
We have a new club member.
We have a new Chaos Kids Club member.
Sarah B.
Sarah, welcome to the party. Oh, we are so happy to have you.
It's gonna be a party. Sarah B.
We're so close to a virtual wine night. So close.
I know.
I think if maybe some of the Chaos Kids who are newer may not know that we made a commitment to have a virtual wine night for Chaos Kids Club members every time we got 10 more new members.
Yes.
And we're just waiting. We're just waiting to hit that next 10 mark.
That's right. Hey, if you have a friend that you know likes to listen, that could be a great Christmas gift.
It could be a great Christmas gift. Look at you, sister.
That's the gift that keeps on giving.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's way better than Jam of the Month Club.
That's right.
Is it jam
it's
or jelly?
But you know what? I still
jelly?
love that you got the reference. Thank you for that.
That's his Christmas bonus.
God.
Okay, sister. Do you have a crime for me today?
I sure as shit do.
Oh, good.
Good? I mean, this one's not good. But I know what you mean.
I mean, they're never good. They're never good.
No, it's not good. I'm going to tell you about the Wu sisters. Okay? So.
That's different than Wu girls.
Correct. Yeah. Different.
Okay.
This is WU.
Oh, okay, great. Mm-hmm.
So it is July 27th, 2000 at about 4:30 a.m. and detectives respond to a 911 call at an apartment complex in northern Toronto. Okay. At this complex are Tina and Theresa Wu. They had moved to Canada. They're together, they're sisters, from Taiwan to study English and music. So it's two teenage girls that are living in an apartment.
Like 18?
One of them is 18, the other one is 14.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So when they walk into this apartment, they're met with what they say is the most brutal crime scene they have ever seen.
Who called them?
Oh, I'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
So it's Tina and Theresa Wu. They are identified by friends who live close by and were sort of keeping an eye on the two girls. Sounds like family friends that lived in Toronto, kind of just checking in on them. They said that they received a call from the girls' apartment, but all they could hear was screaming and moaning in the background.
Oh, no.
So they rushed over to the girls' apartment and found both of them barely alive. So they called 911. What a horrific call.
I can't.
Were you going to say, can I imagine?
Nope. You know what? 2 years later, and I still every once in a while try to say that.
Still can't imagine. Still no.
Still can't imagine. Still answers.
Still no. So they go to the hospital as the scene is being investigated. Investigators find an open basement window, and right beneath the window is a sofa with a single drop of blood on it. So they're hoping this is the attacker's blood that dripped when he left through the window.
Okay.
But the younger sister, Theresa, was sleeping on that very sofa. So.
Okay. But they're in an apartment. Are they in a basement apartment?
I don't know if it's a 2-level kind of townhouse thing or if it's a basement apartment.
Okay.
But the spooky thing is the younger sister was sleeping on the sofa beneath the window, which meant that he had peered in and saw her there.
I hate that.
I hate it. No. And climbed through the window.
Ugh.
I hate it.
One of the things, I regularly have these moments where it's like, man, I wish I had more light down here, basement apartment or whatever. But then I have these moments where I'm really super fucking grateful because I am in a daylight basement, quote unquote daylight basement, that no one's ever looking in my windows.
That's
you know what
true.
I mean?
That's true.
It's not happening.
The
one window that could be something they would fall down a hill and kill themselves trying to get to this window. Do you know what I'm saying?
Also,
it's not happening.
You would never know from the street view that there even is an apartment there.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that for you. I think when I felt most secure was when I was in my condo because we were on the 3rd floor, but it was on that slope. We were very, very high up. And it was just there's nobody coming. There's no way.
Nobody's coming up here.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I just wonder if 18 and these girls were very smart, but it's those little things that making sure your house is really secure before you go to bed and that maybe you just don't think of. I don't know.
And I don't know what kind of window it was, but my first thought when you said that was why did they should have had
a dowel in there,
a dowel rod in that window.
Yep. So 18-year-old Tina dies at the hospital. 14-year-old Theresa survives. Oh. She had stab wounds to her abdomen and multiple defensive wounds on her hands and arms. Her defensive wounds were so bad that her fingers were almost severed.
Oh, that makes that that gives me the creepy crawly feeling. I just
I know. There's no sign that either girl had been sexually assaulted. And Theresa says that the only thing she remembers is waking up on the sofa and seeing a dark figure standing above her. And
so the 14-year-old was the one sleeping on the couch.
Yeah. You know how I feel about home invasions.
I do.
Not that there's people out there that are like, I love them, but
But also, this is reminding me of that gal in Reno where they had the like windows around the door and the couch where you could see somebody like, and they were sleeping on the couch. It's the whole like sleeping somewhere where you're exposed to the outside like that. That's the thing. That's the thing that's so unsettling.
Agreed. The idea of being watched while you sleep is so creepy.
By some random creeper stranger outside your house. God. Yuck.
Okay, this is a total sidebar, but I was listening to one of those podcasts. It was either Radio Rental or Spooked, one of those kind of firsthand account creepy shit. And it was a very similar thing. A young woman was asleep in her apartment or whatever, right beneath a window. And she woke up in the morning to like a dude like peering through the window at her. And her window was cracked because it was summertime. And he whispered, I need to tell you something.
Was this the one where she found out later that it was probably a fucking serial killer? I remember this episode. I heard this one.
I need to tell you something. Oh,
no, you don't. You need to go away.
No.
No.
Oh, my God. Okay. So Theresa doesn't remember anything other than waking up and seeing that. And then it's just a blank after that. So they interview the friends who sort of like knew the sisters and were living close by. And they learned that both girls were very reserved and not at all interested in dating. They were both straight A students. And the older sister, Tina, had been attending a really prestigious university in Taiwan called the Taiwan National University. I guess it's like their version of Harvard.
Okay.
They had a really quiet life of studying and spending time together. Like that was it.
So she was like attending, because this was in 2000, she was attending like correspondence courses?
No, I think she was on a break from school. They'd only been in Toronto for a couple of weeks for like English and music lessons. And I think it was a short-term thing.
Oh, okay. Got
which
you.
Really sucks.
No shit.
What the fuck? So they interviewed everyone who lived at the complex. One young couple who lived in the building said that on the night of the murder, they arrived home around 2:30 a.m. and a faded black Mazda minivan was parked in their spot. So they were like super annoyed and had to go. I remember that from apartment living. There's nothing more enraging than somebody in your fucking spot.
At like 2:00 in the morning.
Fuck off. Yeah. So they parked somewhere else and then they went back outside at around 3:30 and the van was gone. So they were able to move their car. That's like literally the only lead that they get.
Right.
So it could have easily been somebody visiting another resident, but they don't know. So then the results come back on the blood drop found on the sofa, and it comes back as an unknown male who is not in the database.
Oh. Well, also, this is 2000, so the database is not as robust as it is now.
Right. But it does match another unknown male DNA from a sexual assault that had occurred a few months prior in the same neighborhood.
Oh. Now we have a serial offender.
So they go and speak to the victim of this sexual assault, and they find a lot of similarities. So this victim in the sexual assault case was also an Asian woman alone in her house, and she woke up to her attacker standing over her with a pillowcase on his head with holes cut in it.
Oh my God.
That's the worst.
I can't.
What's the horror movie where it's like a gunny sack over the head?
I don't know which one you're talking about. It's probably more than one. But you keep telling me stories about women assaulted in the middle of the night by strange men with knives.
Oh, my next sentence was, and he was holding a knife. I know. Listen.
What? You're on a
I'm
kick.
sorry.
It's fine. You know what? It's fine.
Oh, man. Well, I know. It gives me the creeps. It was creeping me out to research it. So he assaulted her and then took some of her money and left.
Okay, but he didn't stab her.
He didn't stab her, no.
And in the Wu sisters, he didn't assault them. He only stabbed them. Okay.
So luckily he left behind semen at this one. And because police send out notices to the community, all of the Asian women in the area are just fucking terrified.
Yeah.
Rightfully so.
Yep.
So they scour through all of their unsolved cases and they look for any other sexual assaults against Asian women, and they find a third victim. So 6 months prior, another woman was attacked in her home by a masked man with a knife. This woman was beaten so badly that she needed plastic surgery. I know.
My God.
A neighbor who had seen the man like walking over to her house came over and scared him off. That's a good neighbor.
Yeah.
When the police read through all of the interviews of this case, one neighbor said that he was walking his dog through the neighborhood and saw a faded black Mazda minivan parked along the street.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Mm-hmm. So detectives then do a search for every individual in the area who had been investigated and drove a dark Mazda minivan.
Okay.
And this gave them 12 pages of names.
Holy shit. What's going on with the dark Mazda minivan
I didn't
crew?
even know Mazda made a minivan. Like, what?
But also, like, it also has a direct correlation to shady behavior. Like, what are we doing? 12 pages?
I mean, maybe it's not just a stereotype that men with vans can't be trusted.
Just saying.
If you're not in a trade or have a lot of kids, you have no
GTFO.
business with that.
No business. Did you say in a band?
Oh, no, I said multiple kids, but also a band.
A band. Yeah. Those are your three
Otherwise,
choices.
you're a
if
creep.
you are not what, otherwise you're, yep, exactly.
So they know that actually interviewing all of these people will be time consuming. So in the meantime, they decide to set up surveillance in the neighborhood that this person has been targeting. And while on surveillance, they see a black Mazda minivan cruise in the streets of the neighborhood. So they radio dispatch to have an officer come and pull this person over, like find a reason to pull him over.
Okay.
I don't know what the laws are in Canada.
Well, we know that they're pretty loosey-goosey around some things, so.
Yeah. So the driver pulled over was Stuart Cameron, and he happened to live on the same street as two of the attacks prior to the attack on Tina and Theresa.
Isn't that a coincidence?
So they put 24-hour surveillance on Cameron, and they learned that he is married to an Asian woman and has a couple of kids.
Oh, this is just so dark.
Yeah. He seems to be a very devoted family man. They surveilled him taking his kids to school, visiting his parents, taking his kids to the park. And they are hoping that he will discard something that has his DNA on it that they can collect. But after 3 days of following him, they aren't able to collect anything. Like, he's being super careful.
Okay.
But late one night, he goes out alone. And detectives follow him, and they see him come out of a nightclub with a woman.
Is she Asian?
No. But they're like, girl, you in danger, girl.
Right, yeah.
So they follow him, and he drives her out to a pretty isolated location in the back parking lot of a factory. Looks like they're going to have sex in his van.
Okay.
So officers get out of their car, and they like creep around the van close enough so that they can hear if an attack is happening so that they can intervene.
Okay.
But there's no sounds like that coming from the van. So instead, they just had to listen through that.
Oh my God.
So then Cameron gets out of the van to button himself up, and he wipes himself off with a tissue that he then drops on the ground.
Oh.
So once he drives off, they collect that tissue.
Thank you.
Yuck. Thank you. And of course, it comes back as a match.
Okay.
So it's been 40 days since Tina and Theresa's attack, and police arrest Stuart Cameron.
Wow.
When they interview him, he admits that he had been in all of those residents, but he had just stolen from them. He never attacked anyone.
It just so happens that there was somebody following behind him in all of his travels.
Yeah.
Doing these horrific attacks on women right after he stole from them.
Correct. Yeah.
Yep.
That like doesn't even sort of sound believable. Police believe that Cameron had seen Tina and Theresa in the community and knew that they were two, one young girl and one young woman living alone.
Right.
It turns out he was unable to sexually assault the girls because while he was attacking Theresa on the couch, Tina came out and started beating the shit out of him to protect her sister.
Yes, she did.
And she drove him away. Yeah, I know. He ended up receiving 2 life sentences for the murder of Tina and the attempted murder of Theresa.
Wow.
Theresa, unfortunately, who was like an expert pianist along with being a straight A student, has had 2 operations on her hand, but unfortunately, because of her nearly severed fingers, she is no longer able to play the piano.
Oh, man.
I know. That's the story of the Wu sisters.
Oh, my God.
I know. I dug and dug and dug for like their background, their family, like why exactly were they there? And it's all very buttoned up. There's nothing. That's awful.
And this was a white dude, right?
Yeah.
And his wife and his kids.
I know.
Every time there's a story like that, I think about the wife and the kids.
I know. Oh, I know.
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And we got nothing about like what was going on. Like, why? What was he like? What the?
I have no idea.
I don't understand.
There was one person, he was pretty young too. There was like in his early 30s. There was one person who was just like super shocked because he was like, you know, in high school, he was like a football player. He's really handsome, likable guy. Everybody loved him. That kind of the all-American boy, and just like
all Canadian.
Oh, yeah. All Northern American boy. No indication that, I mean, just wild.
I'm telling you, those white boys, man, they're dangerous.
I know.
They are dangerous. Well, sister, how about I tell you a wild ass fucking chaos story that's going to, well, I heard this story actually a few years ago, and I feel like it's a good time to tell this story to maybe an audience that hasn't heard it. Okay. So I'm just going to dive right in for you. Are you ready? So it was the first week of April, 1967. And Ron Jones was a history teacher at Cubberley High School in Palo Alto, California. Palo Alto is in the San Francisco Bay Area, and by this time, it was already a tech center. The city was professional, middle and upper class, mostly like intact, as they would say, like white Catholics, Protestants, and some Jewish people in the community. This was right before the Summer of Love in San Francisco. So there were some hippies coming on the scene at the high school, mostly like the seniors, but there were also the usual like jocks and the car club guys straight out of the 50s. The student body as a whole was pretty progressive socially. The Vietnam War was going on, and these were kids that were active and aware of the times that they were in. Ron was pretty young, really well liked by his students, and his history class was a sophomore class. So they were mostly like 15-year-old, still pretty clean cut kids. He was known for bringing in guests to speak on things as he was teaching them, sometimes controversial guests. Like he brought in someone from the Communist Party. He brought in a Klansman. He brought in someone from the American Nazi Party to talk about white supremacy. He wanted his students to look at the big picture, always, to look at things from all angles. When they studied the Vietnam War, he made them write 10 arguments for it and 10 arguments against it.
Oh, this is a cool teacher.
And he was known for creating simulations. He wanted history to be something that his students experienced. Ron was that teacher that didn't mind if his students called him by his first name. He was chill, fun, charismatic, and his students enjoyed his class. And they never knew what they were going to get. He regularly like rearranged the desks, sometimes like a sprawling circle so they could have discussions. Sometimes he'd even take the class outside. Like he was that
He sounds
guy.
really cool.
Right.
I wonder if he had to get like signed waivers from the parents before he brought like a Klansman in. Or like the school officials. I don't know if there was like
waivers then, but I know that like, you know, he definitely, you know, he would run some of his stuff by his like, by the principal. Yeah. And, you know, the school board would step in and have things to say once in a while. But the principal, you know, for the most part, trusted him and his methods and was like, you go, do your thing. So it was at the end of March, Ron was in the middle of teaching his students the unit on the lead up to World War II and Nazi German society. Because it always comes back to the Nazis here. When one of his students asked the question, how could the German populace claim ignorance of the slaughter of the Jewish people? How could the townspeople, railroad conductors, teachers, doctors claim they knew nothing about concentration camps and the human carnage? How could people who were neighbors and maybe even friends of the Jewish citizens say that they weren't there when it happened? And it was a good question that Ron didn't really know how to answer. So this was a Friday. So over the weekend, Ron thought about it and he decided he had time to experiment. So Monday in class, he set up the desks in perfect rows, took down all the projects that were hanging on the wall, and stood at the front of the class as the students came in. No smile on his face or even in his eyes, and he gave a lecture on the beauty of discipline. He talked about how an athlete feels having worked hard and regularly to be successful at their sport. How a ballet dancer or a painter works hard to perfect a movement. The dedication and the patience of a scientist in pursuit of an idea. It's discipline, self-training, control, the power and strength of will, the trade-off of physical struggle in exchange for superior mental and physical abilities, the ultimate triumph. To demonstrate this to the class, Ron instructed them to fix their seating posture by placing both feet flat on the floor, hands placed flat on the small of their back, forcing a straight alignment of the spine. He told them this better posture would help them concentrate better and strengthen their will. Quote, "There, can't you breathe more easily? You're more alert. Don't you feel better?" he asked them. He had them practice this new posture over and over, walking up and down the aisles between the desks, pointing out small flaws, making improvements. He sent them out of the room and had them come back to their desks at an attention sitting position. He had them do this over and over until they got it down to 15 seconds from all of them in the hall to all of them at their desks. In focused drills, he concentrated attention on the feet being parallel and flat, ankles locked, knees bent at 90-degree angles, hands flat and crossed against the back, spine straight, chin down, head forward. They did noisy drills where talking was encouraged only to be shown as a detraction. After many drills, when he timed them and said they had it down, one student raised their hand and said, "I think we can do better." And so they did, until the class could move from standing positions outside of the room to sitting at attention at their desks without making a sound in 5 seconds.
Jeez.
Then Ron added some new rules to the classroom. Students must be sitting in class at the attention position before the late bell. All students must carry pencils and paper for note-taking. When asking or answering questions, a student must stand at the side of their desk. The first thing they must say when answering or asking a question is, "Mr. Jones." They practiced short, silent reading sessions. Students who responded slowly were reprimanded, and in every case made to repeat their behavior until it was a model of punctuality and respect. The intensity of the response became more important than the content. Mr. Jones instructed that answers be given in 3 words or less. Students were rewarded for making an effort at answering or asking questions. They were also acknowledged for doing this in a crisp and attentive manner. He told them they would either all get an A or they would all get an F together. So they all started doing their homework together to make sure everyone was turning in good work. Soon, everyone in the class began popping up with answers and questions. The involvement level in the class moved from the few who always dominated discussions to the entire class. And the quality of the answers also improved. Everyone seemed to be listening more intently. New people were speaking. Answers started to stretch out as students usually hesitant to speak found support for their effort. Mr. Jones noticed that the students seemed very intent on the assignment and displayed accurate recitation of facts and concepts. They even seemed to be asking better questions and treating each other with more compassion. When Mr. Jones came to class on Tuesday, the next day, he walked into the classroom to find everyone sitting in silence at the attention position.
Jeez.
While some faces were relaxed and had smiles, most of the students looked straight ahead intensely. Mr. Jones walked to the chalkboard at the front of the class and wrote in big capital letters, "Strength through discipline." Then he wrote a new rule below that one, "Strength through community." As the students sat quietly in their proper posture, attentive, Mr. Jones began the day's lecture on the value of community. He waxed on about experiences he'd had throughout his life, talking about the bond that is formed when people work together, struggle together, the feeling of being a part of something greater than yourself. Mm-hmm. To add an exercise to the lesson, he had the students stand and recite the first 2 rules together, starting with 2 students and then adding 2 more each time until the whole class was standing together. They said out loud together, strength through discipline, strength through community.
So he's created little soldiers. I like his metaphor here.
The students began to look at each other and sense the power of belonging. Everyone was capable and equal. They were doing something together. They worked on this simple act for the entire class period. They would repeat the mottos in a rotating chorus or say them with various degrees of loudness. Always, they said them together, emphasizing the proper way to sit, stand, and talk. Mm-hmm. At the end of that day's class, Mr. Jones created a salute for this classroom of students only. Mm-hmm. To make the salute, you brought your right hand up toward the right shoulder in a curled position. He called it the third wave salute because the hand resembled a wave about to topple over. The idea for the third wave came from beach lore that says that waves travel in chains of 3, and the third wave is the last and the strongest.
Okay.
Since they now had a salute, Mr. Jones made it a rule to salute all class members outside the classroom. He also told them not to socialize in groups larger than 2, even at home. Mm-hmm. When the bell sounded, ending the period, he asked the class for complete silence. With everyone sitting at attention, he slowly raised his arm, and with a cupped hand, he saluted. It was a silent signal of recognition. They were something special. Without command, the entire group of students returned the salute. This is day 2.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't take much.
After this, students could be seen saluting each other with a third wave salute outside the classroom. 30 students in the school going around doing this strange gesture to each other got the word out that something was going on in Mr. Jones's history class.
Mm-hmm.
God. But a couple of students that day had asked Mr. Jones why they couldn't say what they thought about the third wave or had expressed concerns about it, and those students had been kicked out of class for the semester and sent to the library.
Oh.
One girl was so upset about it, she told her parents, who asked her what she would like to do about it, and she said she wanted to make posters. So her dad took her to get supplies that night, and she made posters calling out the third wave, and she put them up all over the breezeways at school that night. And the next morning, she came to school, and she hadn't been there for maybe like a whole period, and she decided to go wandering around and look at her handiwork, and they were all gone. In the first hour of school, someone had pulled down all her posters. Mm-hmm. Not because Mr. Jones had asked them to, though. So she did it again the next night and took a ladder with her so she could hang them higher. She and other exiled students tried to get the word out and called themselves the Breakers. Some posters stayed up, but most of them got torn down. On Wednesday, Mr. Jones decided to issue membership cards to every student that wanted to continue what he now called the experiment. Not a single student elected to leave the room. Additionally, there were now 43 students in the class. 13 students had cut class to be a part of the third wave.
Oh my God.
When the class sat at attention, Mr. Jones gave each person a card. He marked 3 of the cards with a red X and informed the ones who received the red X that they had a special assignment to report any students not complying to class rules. The lecture of the day was Strength Through Action. Mr. Jones explained that discipline and community were meaningless without action. He discussed the beauty of taking full responsibility for one's actions, of believing so thoroughly in yourself and your community or your family that you will do anything to preserve them, protect them, and extend them. He stressed how hard work and allegiance to each other would allow accelerated learning and accomplishment. At this point, students stood without prompting and began to give what amounted to testimonials. Mr. Jones, for the first time, I'm learning lots of things. Mr. Jones, why don't you teach like this all the time?
Oh God, this guy's brilliant.
And not only that, but Mr. Jones was a bit shocked at how comfortable and accepting these students were to such an extremely controlled environment. They were also turning in complex and time-consuming homework with improved academic skill. He started to think these kids might do whatever he told them to do. So he tested them. And to be clear, Ron was just making this shit up as he went. To allow students the experience of direct action, he gave each individual a specific verbal assignment. He told one to design a third wave banner. He told another that they were responsible for stopping any student that is not a third wave member from entering his classroom. One student was instructed to remember and be able to recite by the next day the name and address of every third wave member.
Oh my God.
He assigned another the job of training and convincing at least 20 children in the adjacent elementary school that their superior sitting posture is necessary for better learning. Stuff like that. Then he told everyone they each had to give Mr. Jones the name and address of one reliable friend that they thought might want to join the third wave. Then he ended the class with instructions on initiating new members. It went like this. A new member had to be recommended by an existing member and issued a card by Mr. Jones. Once they got this card, the new member had to show they knew the rules and pledge obedience to those rules. So now the experiment was like really outside of the history class, and it kind of got wild.
Yeah.
Members trying to recruit other students at the school were getting into it with the other kids, and some fistfights even broke out in the hallways.
Jesus.
The school cook asked what a third wave cookie looks like, and Mr. Jones said chocolate chip, of course.
Duh.
Right. The principal came into an afternoon faculty meeting and gave Mr. Jones the third wave salute.
Are you serious? The principal?
And Mr. Jones saluted back.
Oh my God.
The librarian thanked Mr. Jones for the 30-foot banner on learning, which she placed above the library entrance that some random third wave members had just made for her.
God.
By the end of the day, over 200 students were admitted into the order, and Mr. Jones was a little scared.
Oh my God.
Mostly because while he had only given 3 students the job of reporting noncompliance within the ranks, around 20 students had already come to him with reports on other members.
Oh my gosh, the students not responsible for tattletaling are doing it anyway?
That's right.
Wow.
Alan didn't salute, or Georgine was talking critically about the experiment. Half the class now considered it their duty to monitor and report on their fellow classmates. Those reported for being seen with the wrong people or breaking code were accused in the classroom in front of everyone in a mock trial, and all the other students would chant, "Guilty, guilty, guilty," and then the student would be banished to the library.
This is going a little bit too far. I mean, okay, this is starting to sound like the Stanford prison experiment on a much smaller scale.
That one's on my list because, well, we'll talk about that another time. And then there were 3 girls in the class, good friends, all 3 of them, the smartest students Mr. Jones had in that class, and they were clearly not thriving in this experiment. The rewards that they were accustomed to winning just didn't exist in this experiment. The intellectual skills of questioning and reasoning were non-existent. In the militant atmosphere of the class, they were stunned and uncertain. They watched the activities, but participated in a mechanical fashion. This was not the atmosphere where they could shine like they normally would. Right. These girls went home and told their parents about the experiment, and one of those parents called their rabbi, who in turn called Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones explained to the rabbi that it was just an exercise to teach the kids about what happened in Germany leading up to and through the Holocaust. And the rabbi was into it, and he said he'd talk to the parents and calm them down.
Okay.
And this is when Mr. Jones got his own lesson, and understanding that similar conversations must have happened throughout history where the clergy accepted and apologized for unacceptable circumstances, becoming not just complicit, but an advocate.
Yeah.
By the end of the 3rd day, Mr. Jones was already exhausted by the whole thing. A lot of the students were super into being a member of the third wave and demanded strict obedience from the other members. Many of them bullied members who didn't take the whole thing seriously enough. Others took it upon themselves to assign themselves with tasks. One student, Robert, who was big for his age and not particularly studious, and one of those kids who never stood out one way or the other, not athletic, not academic, kind of invisible. But the third wave gave Robert a place. He was equal to everyone else. He could take part, be meaningful. Late Wednesday afternoon, Mr. Jones found Robert following him.
Okay.
When Mr. Jones asked Robert what in the world he was doing, Robert smiled, which Mr. Jones had never seen him do before, and said, "Mr. Jones, I'm your bodyguard. I'm afraid something will happen to you."
Oh, no.
Mr. Jones didn't have the heart to tell him no, so he had a bodyguard now.
Oh, my God. Jesus. How long is Mr. Jones going to let this go on before he... I'm getting uncomfortable.
It's Wednesday.
Oh, my God.
It's been 3 days. It's been 3 days. So all day long, Robert opened doors for him and always on Mr. Jones's right. In the faculty room, which is closed to students, he stood silent while Mr. Jones drank his coffee. And when another teacher told Robert there were no students allowed in there, Robert smiled and said he wasn't a student. He was a bodyguard.
Oh, Robert. This is why we're not drinking the Flavor Aid.
This is why we're not drinking the Flavor Aid. Shortly after, Mr. Jones picked more bodyguards and they followed him everywhere he went. Most of them were they were car club guys. And they saluted him and he saluted them. And as they walked through the halls, they saluted other members as they passed who saluted back. So now we have the leader, his cadre, the members, everyone saluting each other everywhere they go. Thursday, Mr. Jones was trying to figure out how to end the whole thing. It was already bigger than he could control now. And he didn't like the ease with which he had taken on the role of dictator.
Right.
Like he was having his own issues with this experiment. He was also in this experiment with them.
And he's, oh my God. Yeah, he went and selected more bodyguards. Oh.
And Wednesday evening, someone had broken into the classroom and ransacked the whole room.
What?
The gal, the breakers gal, she had plastered the classroom in more posters and she'd taped them to like every desktop. And the whole day, everywhere she went, the students at the school, many of them not even in the third wave, were talking about it. Did you hear? Someone broke into the third wave headquarters. Did you hear?
Third wave headquarters. Oh my God. Also, I like this girl.
Right? Thursday morning, Mr. Jones found the father of one of his students sitting on the ground, propped up against the classroom door, and he confessed to being the one who trashed the classroom. So I think that there were actually 2 people that broke in on Wednesday. I think the breaker gal did, and this dad.
Some random dad who's like, I don't know what's going on there.
He was a retired Air Force colonel who had spent time in a German prisoner of war camp.
Oh.
When he heard about the third wave, he simply lost control, and late in the evening, he broke into the room and tore it apart. He told Mr. Jones about his friends that had been killed in Germany. He was holding on to Mr. Jones and shaking. He was pleading that Mr. Jones understand and help him get home.
Oh.
Mr. Jones called the man's wife and with the help of a neighbor, walked him home.
Wow.
This really underscored for Mr. Jones the need to wrap this thing up.
Yes.
But he knew he had to do it delicately. He had students like Robert that would get whiplash if he just called it all to an end and said it was all just a game.
This is 4 days. That is insane.
The third wave was disrupting normal learning. Students were cutting class to participate, and the school counselors were beginning to question every student in the class. The real Gestapo in the school was at work. Faced with this experiment exploding in 100 directions, Mr. Jones decided to try an old basketball strategy. When you're playing against all the odds, the best action to take is to try the unexpected. By Thursday, the class had swollen in size to over 80 students. The only thing that allowed them all to fit was their enforced discipline of sitting in silence and at attention. Mr. Jones closed the blinds on the windows, shut and locked the door. Today's lesson was strength in pride.
Okay.
Pride is more than banners or salutes. Pride is something no one can take from you. Pride is knowing you are the best. It can't be destroyed. And then Mr. Jones changed and lowered his voice and went on. The third wave isn't just an experiment or classroom activity. It's far more important than that. The third wave is a nationwide program to find students who are willing to fight for political change in this country. That's right. This activity we have been doing has been practiced for the real thing. Across the country, teachers like myself have been recruiting and training a youth brigade capable of showing the nation a better society through discipline, community, action, and pride. If we can change the way that school is run, we can change the way that factories, stores, universities, and all the other institutions are run. You are a selected group of young people chosen to help in this cause. If you will stand up and display what you have learned in the past 4 days, we can change the destiny of this nation. We can bring it a new sense of order, community, pride, and action. A new purpose. Everything rests with you and your willingness to take a stand. Then he turned to those 3 girls that had gone to their parents about the experiment and demanded that they leave the room. He assigned 4 guards to escort them out and to the library and instructed them not to allow the girls into the classroom the next day.
Whoa.
He then went on to tell them that the next day, Friday, there would be a rally at noon for third wave members only. He said a national candidate for president would announce the formation of a third wave youth program. Simultaneous to this announcement, over 1,000 youth groups from every part of the country would stand up and display their support for the movement. He told them they were the students selected to represent their area. He asked them if they would represent the school well because the press had been invited to record the event.
Okay.
No one laughed. There was not a murmur of resistance. Instead, a fever pitch of excitement swelled across the room. We can do it! Should we wear white shirts? Can we bring friends? Mr. Jones, have you seen this advertisement in Time magazine? It was too much, this ad. It was a full-page color advertisement in the current issue of Time magazine for some lumber products. It was called The Third Wave, and the ad said in big red, white, and blue letters, "The third wave is coming."
Wait, what?
Is this part of the campaign, Mr. Jones? Is it a code or something? And he said, yes. Now listen carefully. It's all set for tomorrow. Be in the small auditorium 10 minutes before noon. Be seated. Be ready to display the discipline, community, and pride you have learned. Don't talk to anyone about this. This rally is for members only.
Oh, God.
Mr. Jones got to the auditorium early in the morning to prepare. He had called in some friends to pose as the press, to take pictures and interview the students, a bunch of them. He placed a TV set at the front of the room. At around 11:30, students started to trickle in and take a seat, and by noon, the place was packed. Not a seat left to be found. Over 200 students had showed up. Third wave banners were hanging above them. At noon sharp, Mr. Jones closed the room and placed guards at the door. The fake press took pictures and scribbled notes while they pretended to interview the students. A group photo was taken. The third wave members were comprised of every kind of kid in the school, from the jocks to the bikers to the loners and the popular crowd. Everyone was focused on the front of the room. No one moved. No one made a sound. Mr. Jones told the students before he turned on the national press conference he wanted to give the press in the room a demonstration of the training they had received. He saluted the room. The students automatically saluted him back. He led them in a chorus of strength through discipline, strength through community, strength through action, over and over and over, call and response style, each time the response getting louder and louder. He drove home again the importance of this event and asked for one more show of allegiance, and they rocked the room with their loudest response so far. Strength through discipline!
Oh, God.
Mr. Jones turned off the lights in the room and turned on the TV. He stood next to the TV, the only light in the room, the glowing screen with nothing but snow. Robert at his side. He quietly told Robert to pay very close attention, and then Mr. Jones and the press left the room. And the students stared at the TV, waiting.
Mm-hmm.
2 minutes went by, but it felt like an eternity. The air in the room shifted as the students started to get anxious. Some of them bolted up and booked it for the door in a panic. And finally, someone stood up and shouted, "There isn't a leader, is there?"
Oh.
And the students were like just in shock, looking at the TV, and then they were looking around in confusion, and then the lights came on in the room. Mr. Jones was at the back of the room, and he had turned the lights on. He walked to the front. Mr. Jones himself is like visibly shaken. He can feel all this. It's wild, right? The room felt hotter. The tension was palpable. So he calmed them down by having them whisper their chants. Strength through discipline, strength through community, strength through action.
God.
And they all sat up a little straighter, their feet flat on the floor. They chanted a little louder. The TV was still just snow. And finally somebody was like, "There's no party leader, is there?" And he says, "Listen closely. I have something important to tell you. There is no leader. There is no such thing as a national youth movement called the Third Wave. You've been used, manipulated, shoved by your own desires into the place you now find yourself. You are no better or worse than the German Nazis we've been studying."
Oh, fuck.
And then he turned on a projector aimed at a white screen behind the TV. Large numbers appeared in a countdown, and then the roar of the Nuremberg rally blasted onto the screen. The history of the Third Reich paraded into the room. The discipline, the march of the super race, the big lie, arrogance, violence, terror, people being pushed into vans, the visual stench of death camps, faces without eyes, the trials, the plea of ignorance. I was only doing my job. And the film ended on a single written frame. Everyone must accept the blame. No one can claim that they didn't in some way take part. After a few minutes of letting this all sink in, letting the students slowly catch up to what had just happened, Mr. Jones addressed them about this one last time, and he told them about how he had been conflicted most of the week and how he had found himself falling too easily into the role of a dictator, and that the experiment had almost taken on a life of its own without him even realizing it. And then he told them, quote, "Through the experience of the past week, we have all tasted what it was like to live and act in Nazi Germany. We learned what it felt like to create a disciplined social movement, to build a special society, pledge allegiance to that society, replace reason with rules. Yes, we would all have made good Germans. We have seen that fascism is not just something those other people did. No, it's right here in this room, in our own personal habits and way of life. Scratch the surface and it appears. Something in all of us. We carry it like a disease. The belief that human beings are basically evil and therefore unable to act well toward each other. A belief that demands a strong leader and discipline to preserve social order." This is the final lesson to be experienced. This last lesson is perhaps one of the greatest of importance. This lesson was the question that started our plunge into this Nazi life. Do you remember the question? It concerned a bewilderment at the German populace claiming ignorance and non-involvement in the Nazi movement. If I remember the question, it went something like this. How could the German soldier, teacher, railroad conductor, nurse, tax collector, the average citizen claim at the end of the Third Reich that they knew nothing of what was going on? How can a people be a part of something and then claim at the demise that they were not really involved? What causes people to blank out their own history? In the next few minutes, perhaps years, you will have an opportunity to answer this question. If your enactment of the fascist mentality is complete, not one of you will ever admit to being at this final third wave rally. Like the Germans, you will have trouble admitting to yourself that you have come this far. You will not allow your friends and parents to know that you were willing to give up individual freedom and power for the dictates of order and unseen leaders. You can't admit to being manipulated, being a follower, to accepting the third way as a way of life. You won't admit to participating in this madness. You will keep this day and this rally a secret. And it's a secret I will share with you.
Jeez.
As the students started to get up and leave the auditorium, Mr. Jones turned and saw Robert crying.
Oh, Robert. It's like, I'm not really a bodyguard then? No, Robert.
So he hugged a sobbing Robert and told him it's over. It's all right. And some of the students hugged Robert and Mr. Jones as they left. Others were crying as well. And in the next year that Mr. Jones taught at Cubberley High School, they talked about the experiment and studied their actions that week, but no one ever admitted to attending the third wave rally. That was something that they all wanted to forget.
Yeah.
Ron Jones was fired the following year by the school board. They didn't like his teaching methods.
Oh.
About 5 years later, he ran into a student that had been in the third wave, and the student gave him the salute, which Ron returned. And that night he went home and wrote about the whole story, wrote it all down, what happened, which is where I got most of the details for this. It was published in the Fulworth catalog and written about in Psychology Today. This was like 1971-ish. Norman Lear bought the rights to the story and turned it into a musical, which became an after-school special that got turned into a primetime television drama. That was turned into a novel called The Wave. This was 1981. The novel, The Wave, is required reading in Germany and in a number of schools in so-called Israel and the United States.
Wow.
In 2008, a German film called Die Welle, which means The Wave, told the story of the experiment in a modern German classroom. And in 2010, a documentary premiered called Lesson Plan, which interviews Ron and former students who participated in his experiment.
Jesus.
In the documentary, he has like a reunion of sorts with some of the students at the end that either attended Cubberley at the time or were in his class. And he told them that he would never do that experiment again, knowing what he knows now, that it was the actions of a very young and inexperienced teacher who didn't know what he was doing.
Oh.
After being fired, Ron was never allowed to teach again. He never got another like legit high school teaching job, which changed everything for him because all he ever wanted to do was teach history to high schoolers and coach basketball.
Yeah.
At the time of filming of the Lesson Plan, he was teaching poetry writing to mentally disabled adults.
Okay.
Lesson Plan is interesting. I watched that, seeing a bunch of the former students as grown adults now, like boomer age. They're like boomer aged, talking about that experience and how they remember it. And
this is the wildest thing I've ever heard. Do you think that what he did was brilliant or fucked?
Both.
Same. I'm like conflicted between like,
it's
that's
both.
fucked, but it's also
both.
brilliant. Yeah.
Because you couldn't ever do it again. I mean, I mean, maybe there's some places where you could get away with doing it again, but like for multiple reasons, you couldn't do it again.
Yeah.
The fact that they didn't even recognize what was happening to them while they were right in the middle of the lesson. Right?
God.
It's really about how easily certain societies are already prepped and set to follow the leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow.
That's the third wave.
That left me speechless. That's saying something.
I mean, yeah, when one of us doesn't have anything to say.
Yeah, I like need to let that marinate for a while.
Right.
Yeah, that was a lot. That's wow.
It's intense. Mm-hmm. That's some deep fucking shit.
Wow, sister. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you. It seemed an appropriate time to resurface this story. Get it back out in the ether. Yeah. You know?
For sure. Whew, God. I don't even know, God, I don't even know how to pivot from that. There's nothing to do here.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like that thing too, right? Where it's like, we've covered cults before, which this is a version of falling into cult. This is culty stuff, right? Like fascism is like, there is fascism in cults, right? Like that's there's one person who's in charge. You follow the leader, you do what you're told, and all these other aspects, right? And how many times have we been covering a cult? One of us has been talking about a cult, and like you're talking about like the things that they believe or whatever, and you're like, well, actually that's good. I like that. Yeah. That sounds good. Right. And it's like, you know, discipline, community, pride, action. Like there's nothing wrong with those inherently, right? Like those are all like great things to have. Those are good qualities. Community is important, and you should take pride in you right? Yeah. Like you should take action. You can't get anything in life if you just sit back and don't, you know what I mean? Like
there's a lot of truth, and then the evil is sprinkled in, and you almost don't even notice it.
That's right.
It's like a slow poisoning.
That's right.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I used to say that I would never be susceptible to this kind of thing, but I can see how it could happen to anyone.
It could happen to anyone.
That was very arrogant of me to think that I am immune.
I think that a lot of people think that they are immune. And I honestly think that the people that think they're immune are maybe even at the end of the day more susceptible because you're less vigilant.
Yeah. Don't have your guard up. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Oh my God.
Right. And like one of the things that the kids, like some of the, they're adults now talking about it, like looking back on it, were like, you know, talking about how like there was one gal who was like, it was all rubbing me the wrong way, but like everybody was doing it.
Yeah.
That was a part of it. Right. Like where it's like, well, I don't want to, you know, or, like one guy was like, well, you know, our grade was tied to participation. Like if we didn't participate well enough, like we wouldn't get the A that the class was going to get. Right. And so it's like, he was like, now translate that to, you know, your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Social pressure to conform.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was wild, sister.
There you go,
thank
sis.
you.
There you go. Hey, thank you. Thank you. Hey, you guys, you know, we do more content. It's behind a paywall, but it's only $5 a month. And you get an extra episode, and all the new episodes come out a day early. And once we get to 40 subscribers, we will do another virtual wine night and hang out and have a good time. So head on over to patreon.com/crime, wine, and chaos. Join the club. You can actually become a member without paying, and you can see what we don't put behind the wall and stay up to date on the things that we post over there and talk to us over there and all that. But also do a review for us.
I love it. A little typey. Apple is preferred if you've got it. Yeah.
Although, you know what I noticed? This is wild. Spotify now has a function on the episodes that you can leave comments.
Oh, good. Do that then.
Like, yeah, you can leave comments. Well, on individual episodes, I don't know if you can leave them on. There's no like typey for like a general review for the show.
Oh, I see.
But you can leave comments on the episodes.
That's cool. All right.
So, anyway.
Yeah. Fuck.
Sister, I
love you so much.
That was so chaotic.
Goodbye. Bye.
Bye.
Wine, and Chaos is produced by 8th Direction Records. Artwork by Joshua M. Davis. Music by Paul Abner. If you would like to support the show, you can visit our Patreon page at crimewineandchaos.com/Patreon. Cheers. First off, can you turn your mic down a tiny bit because you're clipping? Also, God, maybe I should have some wine. Fuck. So